If you're watching this right now and life feels impossible, I need you to stay with me for the next few minutes. This isn't a motivational speech from someone who has always had everything figured out. This is the truth from someone who spent years trapped in addiction, lost almost everything that mattered, and reached a point where I genuinely believed my life was over. I know what it feels like to look at your life and wonder how you're ever going to come back from the things you've done. I know what it's like to feel ashamed, hopeless, and completely exhausted. But I'm here today because my story didn't end where I thought it would. And if my story can help even one person believe that their life can change, then every painful chapter was worth sharing. For 15 years, addiction controlled almost every decision I made. I wasn't really living anymore. I was surviving one day to the next. My entire world became centered around drugs, getting money, finding drugs, and trying to escape whatever I was feeling inside. The people I loved became secondary to my addiction, even though I didn't want that to happen. Addiction changes the way you think. It convinces you that the next high is more important than your family, your future, or even your own life. I lost trust, opportunities, relationships, and eventually I lost myself. There were times when I would look in the mirror and barely recognize the person looking back at me. I knew I was hurting people. I knew I was destroying my life. But knowing something is wrong doesn't mean you know how to stop it. One of the most painful consequences of my addiction was losing my children. There were kinds of pain that come with knowing your choices have affected the people you love the most. I carried an incredible amount of guilt and shame. I made promises before that I couldn't keep, and eventually people stopped believing what I said. And honestly, I couldn't blame them. My addiction had taught me to lie, to manipulate, and hide what was really happening. I had become someone my family couldn't depend on. Looking back, that's one of the hardest things for me to admit. But admitting it is also part of my recovery. I can't change what I did back then. What I can do is make sure that the person I am today is different from the person I was then. Eventually, my life became completely unmanageable. I was living out of my car in another province, homeless. I had a Canada wide warrant. I had debt hanging over me, and I was surrounded by problems that I didn't know how to solve. I had run away from home thinking I could escape everything, but you eventually realize that you can't outrun yourself. You can change your location, you can change the people around you, and you can try to bury your problems, but eventually you have to face yourself. I remember looking at my life and thinking, how did I get here? That wasn't the life I had imagined when I was younger. But addiction doesn't usually destroy your life all at once. It happens one decision at a time until one day you look around and realize you don't recognize anything anymore. I reached the darkest point of my entire life. I had a gun, and I convinced myself there was no way forward. I believed that ending my life would end this pain. At that moment, I couldn't see a future. I couldn't see my family. I couldn't see recovery. I couldn't see anything beyond the pain I was feeling right then. But looking back now, I understand something I couldn't understand at the time. I didn't necessarily want my life to end. I wanted the pain to end. I wanted the guilt, the fear, the addiction, the shame, and the hopelessness to stop. And if you're watching this right now and you're having thoughts like this, please understand that what you're feeling in this moment doesn't have to be permanent. A moment can feel like forever when you're inside it, but moments can change. Lives can change. People can change. I know because mine did. Eventually, I stopped running. I turned myself in, and that decision terrified me. I didn't know what the future was going to look like, and I knew there were consequences I had to face. But surrendering was also the beginning of my recovery. For years, I had tried to control everything except the one thing I actually needed to change myself. I had to admit that I couldn't keep living the way I was living. I needed help. I needed accountability. I needed to stop blaming everybody else and start taking responsibility for my own choices. That was incredibly difficult, but it was also freeing. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do isn't pretending you're okay. Sometimes it's finally saying, I need help. Recovery didn't suddenly make everything perfect. There wasn't some magical moment where I woke up and all my problems disappeared. I had to rebuild my life from the ground up. I went back to my parents and spent a lot of time reflecting on where my life had gone. I had to learn to live without drugs. I had to learn to deal with my emotions I'd spent years running away from. I had to start earning trust again. And trust doesn't come back because you say you're changing. It comes back because you consistently show people that you're changing. One day at a time, one decision at a time, one promise kept at a time. Recovery taught me that you don't have to rebuild your entire life in one day. You just have to make the next right decision. One of the biggest lessons I've learned is that sobriety isn't simply about putting down drugs. It's about learning how to live differently. You have to learn how to deal with stress without escaping. You have to learn how to face your past without letting it destroy your future. You have to learn how to forgive yourself while still taking responsibility for what you've done. And you have to understand that having a bad day doesn't mean you're failing. Recovery doesn't mean you'll never struggle again. It means you'll have new tools for dealing with the struggles. There are still difficult days in my life. There are different things that I regret. But today, when life gets hard, I don't need to destroy myself to escape it. That's freedom. Slowly, things started changing. I began rebuilding relationships. I began rebuilding trust. I got the opportunity to be present for my family again. Eventually, I remarried my best friend, built a life, and became present for my children in a way I never thought would be possible. Today, I get to wake up and experience ordinary things that I once would have taken for granted. Being there for my family, having conversations, laughing, making memories, going to bed sober and waking up sober. Those things might sound simple, but to someone who once thought their life was over, that's everything. My life isn't perfect today, and recovery didn't magically erase my past, but I don't need a perfect life to be grateful for the life that I do have. If you're watching this and you're struggling with addiction, depression, mental health, or just feeling like you've completely messed up your life, I want you to hear this from me. You are not too far gone. I know that's difficult to believe when you're in the middle of it. I know what it's like to believe that your family would be better off without you. I know what it's like to believe that you've destroyed too much and there's no way back. But those thoughts don't have to decide your future. You don't have to fix your entire life today. You don't have to know how everything is going to work out. Just make it through today. Ask for help. Tell somebody the truth. Take one step, then take another. If there's one thing I want you to remember from my story, it's this: your worst chapter doesn't have to be your final chapter. I went from addiction, homelessness, losing my family, running from my problems, and believing I had no future to building a life I never thought I would have. I didn't do it perfectly. I didn't do it overnight. I simply refused to give up. My faith became a huge part of that journey, too. When I couldn't believe in myself, I held on to the belief that God hadn't given up on me. Today, I'm grateful for another day, another chance, and another opportunity to be the person I should have been all those years ago. So if you're still here, there's hope. If you're watching this while you're hurting, please reach out to somebody you trust and get help. If you're in recovery, keep going. Your story isn't over. You might just be standing at the beginning of the chapter you never thought you'd get to write. If this video helped you in any way, share it with somebody who may need to hear it. And if you're fighting your own battles, leave a comment saying, I'm still here. Because sometimes those three words are more powerful than people realize. You made it through another day, and sometimes that's where everything belongs. Please hit the subscribe button, and God bless. Have a great day. Thank you.